Hi everybody. In this video today we're going to be talking about lesson 6.4, which is standard form of an equation. So we've learned a couple of different forms already. We learned slope intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. We learned point slope form, which is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And today we're going to talk about standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. The first thing that we want to talk about is just how do you know which one's which? And so you just have to look, mostly if you look at the left-hand side, then you'll see what's going on. So for instance, on slope intercept form, on the left-hand side, all we have is a y. That's it. So if all it is there is a y, it is slope intercept form. Whereas on point slope form, on the left-hand side, we have a y minus a number. And so that's going to look different. And then on standard form, we actually have an x and a y. So those are the three things that we're going to be looking at. Let's take a look at this first one. Again, let's look at the left-hand side and focusing on the left-hand side. This side one only has a y. What does that match up with? Well, that's going to match up with slope-intercept form. It only has a y over here, and you can see that then it would be mx plus b. It's a minus, but that's okay. It's a little difference, not a big difference. So let's look at the second one. I'm focusing on the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, I see an x and a y. When I see an x and a y, then I know that that's a standard form. And on number 3, on the left-hand side, I see y minus a number. When I see y minus a number, I know that's point slope form. I want you to take a look at these next 3, and they're a little bit tougher, not a lot, but a little bit, and see if you can make a guess as to what each one is. All right, this first one on the left has both x and y. If it's both, then it's standard form. This one has just a y only. But then what's on the right? Because I'm looking at number 6, I'm looking at number 5, and they both have a y just on the right. You know what? I'm going to look at number 6 first and show you something. This is just a y, and then on the right, we have a number times x. Okay, so we have these 3 options. But also, if I wanted to, I could say plus 0 on the end. And if I said plus 0 on the end, now it looks a little bit more like slope-intercept form. But on this one, notice I have these parentheses. Well, of the 3 forms, which one has parentheses in it? This one does, point-slope form. And my main point here is that it might not be exactly, like there might be a little piece missing. Sometimes that happens. But we can always just kind of, make it work with which one is the closest. And we have enough evidence. For instance, on this one, it was supposed to be y minus a number. Well, maybe that number is 0. And so maybe it was actually y minus 0 equals 3 times x plus 2. Well, now I can see that's definitely in point slope form. So just keep in mind, start off looking at the left-hand side, but then also do look at the right-hand side and pick which one has the most things that match up. All right, in this section, we are asked to rewrite them into slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So in other words, whatever I do, I want it to end up looking like this. But I can't just jump and do that. I have to work it out algebraically. And so you might have done this before in some of your pre-algebra classes. And we also talked about this the other day when we were talking about literal equations. So if I want it to be in y equals mx plus b form, I want to isolate that y and get it all by itself. Well, how do I do that? I subtract my 4x from both sides. And so I'm going to subtract that 4x from both sides. I'm going to bring things down. I'm going to, 4x minus 4x, that's 0. Don't need that. Now that that's gone, I don't really need the plus. So I do need the y, though. The next thing is equals. And now I'm going to scoot over and make some space and put my negative 4x in front and my plus 8 on the end. By scooting this over, that allowed me to put it and match up with y equals mx plus b. I think you can see if you put these next to each other, they look very similar. So that is my final answer. All right, let's try another one. Once again, our final destination where we want to get to is y equals mx plus b. So we need to do whatever we need to do to get our equation to look like this. So in other words, we need to isolate that y, get it all by itself. How do we do that? Well, we follow PEMDAS backwards. So in other words, we add and subtract first. So I'm going to subtract my 6x from both sides. I'm going to bring everything down. 6x minus 6x is 0. I do need this minus sign because in this case now this minus has become a negative. And I still have my 6y. And I have my equals. I'm going to scoot my 12 over and make some space and make room for my minus 6x. And just remember that minus stays with the 6. Does not go with the 12. It stays with the 6. Okay, we're not done. We're still solving for y. So I need to get rid of my negative 6. How do I get rid of negative 6? I divide. And remember, I have to divide everything by negative 6. So now negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1. So I could call this 1y if I wanted to. But I think we know by now that we don't really need that 1. But you can have it if you want to. Same thing over here. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 is a 1x. And then 12 divided by negative 6 is a minus 2. So I could leave those 1's in there, but usually we don't. Usually we just call it y equals x minus 2. And once again, now that matches up very closely with y equals mx plus b. That is my final answer. All right, one more problem. We're going to isolate our y. We're going to follow PEMDAS backwards, so we're going to do our subtraction first. This subtracts to be 0. I bring down my minus, my 5y equals. I scoot that over and make room so I can put my 3x first and then minus 15. This one's going to have some fractions in it. That's okay, we can do that. Now, again, I'm solving for y. I need to isolate my y. To isolate that y, I'm going to divide by negative 5. I'm going to divide everything by negative 5. So now my negative 5's divide out to be a 1. So I get 1y equals negative divided by negative is a positive. And I'm going to call this 3/5 x. And I'll talk about that in just a second. And another negative, that gives me a positive. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Now a couple things. Once again, I usually don't have the 1. I don't need that 1. I can drop it off. With the 3/5 x, I'm going to leave it as 3/5 with x over here. If you leave the x in the top, that's okay too. You could call this 3x over 5. That would be fine. And then I have my plus 3, and then I'm finished. Okay, so that is how we change things over from standard form to slope intercept form. Now, of course, the whole reason we do that is so that we can graph things, right? So that's what we're going to do on this page, is we're going to switch the forms, and then after we switch forms, then we're going to graph it. So once again, my goal is to get down to the form y equals mx plus b. How am I going to get there? Well, I need to isolate my y. I'm going to do PEMDAS backwards. So I get this drops off, becomes 0. I get a negative 2y is equal to, I scoot this over, negative 4x plus 6. Remember that negative stays with the 4, does not go on the 6. I need to divide. I'm going to divide everything by negative 2. The reason, that's going to get my y all by itself. So when I divide this, I get 1y, and this becomes 2x. Negative divided by negative is positive. And this one becomes a minus 3, because positive divided by negative is a negative. And once again, I don't really need that 1. I wouldn't count off if you had it. That'd be okay. But this really is in point slope form. Okay, the whole reason we're doing this is so that we can graph it. So now let's go over to our graph. Do you remember how to graph from slope intercept? We start at negative 3 on the y-axis. Remember, our y-intercept is 0, negative 3. And then we go up to right 1, up to right 1, up to right 1, up to right 1, and so forth. Or you could go down to left 1. Because anytime you have a slope that is not a fraction, you can always call it 2 over 1. And that's how you get that up to right 1. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these points with a straight edge. So here's my line. By now we should know how to graph from y equals mx plus b, and I think all of us do, but it doesn't hurt to practice. Okay, so again, we are solving for y because we want it in slope-intercept form. We're going to do PEMDAS backwards and subtract our 2x. So now we bring down. That drops off because it becomes 0. We get a minus 5y is equal to, scoot this over, negative 2x minus 10. Now, we don't want a negative 5y, we just want a regular y. So we're going to divide everything by negative 5. So that's going to give me y equals positive 2/5 x plus 2. And remember a minute ago I said that you could leave that as 2x over 5. That's true, but since we're graphing, it makes more sense to say 2/5 x, because then we have a rise over run. Okay, we're going to plot that 2 as my y-intercept, and I'm going to go up 2, right 5, or down 2, left 5. And I'm going to get my straight edge. And when you get your straight edge, or when you plot your points and connect them, make sure that you're filling up as much of that graph area as possible. So it shouldn't just be a little stubby line, it should be across the whole thing. I'm going to put arrows on the end, and there's my graph. One last example. Okay, I am solving for y, so I need to subtract x. It's 1x, but I can call it x or 1x. So that drops off because it's 0. This becomes 3y equals negative x plus 0. I'm going to divide by 3, and when I do that, I have to divide everything by 3. So I get y equals negative, notice a negative, 1/3 x plus 0. Now, if it's plus 0, I really don't need that 0. I just kind of had it in there because it came from the problem and I wanted to make sure that everyone knew it wasn't just going away. But now it really can go away because we just don't usually put it there. However, maybe we should, because actually that's going to help us because it tells us our y-intercept is 0, 0. Right? That's where our y-intercept goes. So that's a 0. Then we go down 1 and right 3, down 1, right 3, or up 1, left 3, up 1, left 3. And then I get my straight edge and I connect my points. So there's my line. Okay, so in this lesson we learned about how to change the equation from standard form to point slope form. The reason we do that is a lot of people think that point slope form is easier to graph with. I don't think it's necessarily true, but some people do. And so here's how you can always change over so you can graph it that way. Okay, we will work on this in class next time.